Learn from my mistake. Are you tired of hearing the same old advice when it comes to real estate? Do you want to learn from the biggest and baddest mistakes in the industry? Then welcome to Learn from My Mistake, the podcast that brings you real estate professionals from all over, sharing the biggest blunders and how to avoid them. I'm one of your hosts, Jake Remillard, and I'm joined by my partner, Marie Baginski. We're here to give you the inside scoop on what not to do in the real estate game. From brokers to investors, we've got it all. We're not just here to tell you about our guest failures, though. We're here to help you learn from them so you can make the right moves when it counts. So buckle up and get ready to hear some juicy stories and expert advice you won't find anywhere else. This is Learn from My Mistake. New episodes drop every week. Don't miss out. Learn from my
Yeah, we love the name of our podcast, don't we? Learn from my mistake. Or I think it's better when you say learn from my fuck up, Jake. Just throwing it out there.
When I say it, or when
you say it. When you say it in the intro. You know?
That's actually not even edited. That's how I record it. I can just alter my vocal cords.
All right. Well, I'm excited to be back. We've had a couple of week hiatus because I've been out of the country. So it's kind of fun to get back in the groove with our Learn from My Mistake podcast. For anybody listening in, I am one of your hosts, Marie Baginski, but my sexier voiced coworker made the intro. Jake, how's it going, Jake?
I'm doing good. Welcome back. Welcome back to fiction, not real life, as we discussed. Glad to have you. And what's going on, guys? Jake Remillard. Today, we are joined by, and let me make sure I get this correct, Trystan Trenberth. Did I get that right, Trystan?
Yeah, wait.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Wait, you. I think you said it right, but Trystan does.
I think that's great.
Muted.
Awesome.
You did it good?
Yeah.
But I want to hear you say it because you'll say it with an accent. That'll sound better.
Everything sounds better for me. Trystan Trenberth.
So anyway, I'm excited to be back. We did talk about, so Trystan, do you know that expression, like you're back to reality?
Yeah, you're back to the Matrix now, really, aren't you?
Right. And I'm like, wait a minute. Why did I just leave real life when I went on vacation for a couple of weeks to Europe? I think that was just, more real than the everyday grind. Why do we call it going back to the real world?
Absolutely.
This feels more like fiction. That was fantasy. That was good, real stuff.
What was that song we grew up? Back to life, back to reality. You remember that one? Then?
Of course. Jake's doing a little. It was a pop song, Jake. You don't listen to pop.
It was before you were born, Jake.
Yeah. Well, I listen to some old stuff, but it's the genres. It gets a little. I'm a little bit of a purist. I don't know.
Well, I'm impressed. You know this guy, so that makes up for a lot.
Oh, absolutely. John Petrucci's a man.
Yeah. All right. So for all of our listeners, Trystan, I mean, you and I have met now several times at different events, and I feel like we're hardcore, always learning. But I want you to give everybody kind of an introduction. What's your background, business, real estate? Who is Trystan Trenberth?
Who am I? That's an interesting question. It's something that changes every day, hopefully in the right direction. But I'm a British-born expatriate. I live here in the United States, have done since 2005, apart from a couple of years when I went back and worked around Europe. We were just talking about Italy. And I have a background in originally hospitality management, then went through about 20-odd years in the information systems and information systems management world, information security, and then found Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then the world changed. So, I'm a dad. I am a pretty awesome human being and don't recognize that as often as I should, but people like you guys do. So that's a great help. And just sharing myself with the world, and probably share myself too often at times in the way that I don't share myself with myself enough. And, that's one of those fuck ups that I think that we can probably address later on.
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting, right? When you're given and taking care of everybody else, and sometimes you don't take that time for yourself. Uh, self-love is a real thing.
Yeah.
So, but all right, so tell me a little bit, Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? I think that's like an entry book that, oh my gosh, just opens the eyes to so many people about like, what am I doing? Why am I working for somebody else and making somebody else get rich? So what was that like for you? What was that turning point with Rich Dad Poor Dad? What changed?
I think it was on the shelf for about a year before I read it. That's the irony, isn't it? You have something there but you always read it at the perfect time. Everything happens at the perfect time, and maybe a year before I wouldn't have been doing what I do now, which, but it really was the asset versus liability, buy assets to pay for the liabilities. Still not too far down that path, but the theory's there, the understanding is there, and also the perspective of building your own dream instead of building somebody else's.
Yeah.
Both of those things really resonated for me, and have really been, top of mind a lot of the time, but always in the back of the mind when I'm looking at things. If you kind of look at the hierarchical needs, that's probably at the top is finding what your purpose is and always working towards that. In this world, pretty much all of our needs are met without even having to lift a finger. And we got this voice in our head, the drunk monkey, who keeps telling us that we're not good enough, we don't have what we need, we got to do more. And there's a very survivalist approach to making money. And then there's an enlightened perspective to making money as well. When we look at what we have in our life, as far as, health and time and money is ironically the most infinite, or is pretty much an infinite resource for us. They keep printing more of it. Interest is money that is created out of thin air. That never existed before, somebody borrowed money. There's just an ever increasing amount of money in the world. The thing that we have least of and is ticking away every day, we don't know how much it is the time. And, if we dive into the first mistake, is really how can we most effectively leverage our time to create the most money that we can? And we run around doing $10 an hour tasks when we could be doing things that could earn us $1,000 or $10,000 or $1 million an hour, picking up pennies, walking over dollars. So, I don't know if it's the time to share your first thing, but, Pace always says about delegating and outsourcing things. That is really something that I have, I think, from a sort of imposter syndrome, traitor, inauthentic self, I feel, and referring back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad with the cash flow quadrant, stuck in the self-employed mindset. I may as well just do it myself. It's easier than training somebody else, or I've made some mistakes. I can do that now, instead of allowing somebody else to make the same mistake you did, but with a different perspective that gives a different learning lesson from that error, and maybe a much greater level of growth for the business as a whole. And certainly the opportunity for somebody else to fail and grow through that failure.
Yeah. So with that mindset shift now, is that something are you working with other team members? Are you working with assistants now? What have you at least implemented, knowing that outsourcing is an issue?
Sure. I think it's finding somebody you're in alignment with, that can operate to a level similar to yourself or beyond. Somebody with different skills, and we're just in the process of building out some team that are able to do sort of acquisitions and so forth. Got an amazing partner, Myra. We started an LLC after about 4 or 5 months of working together. We're about to acquire our first property this week, which will be a pad split. We've been doing, although I don't like the fact that I'm wholesaling, really, it's just a bias of mine. It's part of the business, but I try and avoid it. But it's a needful thing at times. We've been doing that together, and I've always said that I don't want to be a wholesaler. I don't want to run a wholesale team. But if I can find somebody that will run a team for me, then we'll have a conversation. But it comes with all of the integrator things that, coming from a data background, I understand flow of data, flow of information. I know what I want to see, but I'm not the one that wants to sit down and power through the problems and, I can probably help with some of those logical problems, but that's just not my cup of tea. That's not a $10 an hour task. It's somebody else's $1,000 an hour task that is outside of my purview or my wish to do. So I did have a VA for a period of time. I didn't take the time to train them well. I didn't allow them to succeed as well as they could have done, and it just didn't seem to be the benefit that I anticipated it being. So just learning and working with people, and everyone gets into this business thinking they have to wholesale. And I always have conversations. What did you do before you got into real estate? And I generally find that 60% of those people shouldn't be wholesaling. They could be a buyer, they could be a closer, they could be different parts, but certainly not wearing every hat of the wholesale business. They've got other skills that can be leveraged, but we got this problem in life where there's a squirrel or there's a silver object, and we start to lose our attention and chase after that thing. Although we might be good at it, people see we're good at it, and then they want you to do it for them. But again, it takes us away from what we, would be best doing for ourselves, and then sharing that with the world.
Yeah.
Wow. So I feel like you just covered, you hit so many fantastic points there. I want to draw back to just one of them, being the VA. We've had a lot of people come on, and you did touch on this point, I think, incredibly well, was kind of owning and accepting. You said you didn't take the time to train them quite as well, and you didn't get that outcome. But just since you brought it up, can you get a little bit more specific for maybe somebody that's listening to this that hasn't ever hired a VA? What were some of the mistakes there, specific, if you could share?
Absolutely. I mean, it's very common to observe that, VAs suck. Well, tell me about that. Have you got a data problem and the VA is doing very well with what you have? Have you got a VA problem that's doing well with great data? Or have you got a systems problem where the dialer isn't working with the data that is good and the VA is not doing well? How can you distinguish between those things? And if you're new, do you really know the sales process well enough to pick out which of those three variables is the problem, rather than just throwing away the VA aspect, which is the most coachable, most relatable part of the process, and is most flexible in giving you that benefit of being that consistent person that grows with the data and grows with the system. So I think people have it arse about tit, as we say in the UK. But they're looking at it the wrong angle. You know what I mean? They're quick to dismiss somebody that they not intentionally dismiss as a low quality worker, or it's easy to look at a VA as a commodity rather than a human being. Now, very often, we as human beings, we only succeed as well as our parents, our family, our mentors, the people who influence us, and the people we hang around, those 5 people. We're only as good as the average of the people we hang around. So if they hang around somebody like, me, that didn't spend the time training with them, I can't hold them at fault for not performing at their top ability, sitting down once a day with them and going through, listening to calls. I got to take full accountability for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think you hit so many things like that, I didn't even think about. Training is one thing for a VA, right? And we've all heard, like, you can't just expect a VA. It doesn't matter if you hire them through a real estate virtual assistant company or something like that. You can't expect them to just come in and know what they're doing, right? Yeah. Especially not with your systems, your criteria, your market. But I love that you touched on the fact that, are you working with good data? Do you even know if you're working with good data, right? Or is the process, or maybe the scripts that you gave the VA, or something else not working? So I just love that aspect of thinking about, like, sometimes it's not even just the training. It's you've spent the time and you've given them good scripts, but now the data sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
I just said there's just got to be a huge awareness. And I think that transcends everything in life, is awareness. Unless we're aware and we're open to, constructive criticism, or be understanding that we may and are always making mistakes, and willing to make the mistakes for the gain that comes the other side of the failure. Every breakdown is the beginning of a breakthrough.
Yeah, absolutely. Failing forward, just taking all those lessons and building on them. Trystan, did you, I don't know why I'm stuck on this, but it's an interesting topic to me because I have had VAs since I started. Did you go through an agency or did you direct hire?
I went through an agency each time, which was 2 occasions. And I may have fallen flawed decision making, as I've just outlined in the first case. And then in the second case, I've shared with you that I didn't spend the time. We had very good communication. I'm still in touch with him now and recommend his company to others. He actually split away from the guy that hired him through and started his own company with his wife, who was the sort of my manager of him, I suppose, which still is. They're married. So I recommended him to several people since, and I'll always promote him because he was always loyal and amazing and willing and coachable, and now he's managing other VAs. So
awesome.
I think he's hired somebody this week that I sent to him last week. So it's interesting to look at those things.
Did you have something, Marie?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask even more on the side of maybe working with your partner, because you mentioned that you started working with, was it Myra?
Myra, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jake and I, similarly worked together for maybe 5 or 6 months, where he was actually wholesaling some deals to me before we decided to do a joint venture LLC. So tell me a little bit about what your thought process was there. Cause I know when I first started in real estate, a lot of it I think is a mindset shift, right? The more you're in programs, the more you're around people, the more you learn, the more you grow. But I, in the beginning, felt like it was only going to be me or me and my husband, right? Like I didn't trust anybody else. I didn't want a partner. So I'm just curious for you, how long were you kind of working on your own before you decided to work with a partner?
I tried a couple of different partners over a year and a half, and they always say, hire slowly, fire quickly. I probably went again the other way around in both of those cases. But each of the people are good people, and I connect to people very well. But it's really noticing and being clear on what you're looking for and whether everyone aligns together, and just having those check-ins. And with Myra, over the last 2 years I've done a lot on mindset for a long time. And the last couple of years have been extremely helpful, putting me into a position where I'm looking for ease and flow, not lazy, but ease and flow. Things must go by themselves easily without forcing. And I've just become aware there are certain relationships that I have which just feel so warm, and without being romantic, in a very loving kind of way, it just feels a really super deep connection. Not all, not everyone I'm working with, but they're friends and acquaintances and people in real estate and not in real estate. I just noticed that when I work with these people, life is just easier. Opportunities come my way, and it's not that they don't take time and energy to solve the problems or work on the deals, but working with those opportunities just seem to be so much easier, rather than I need to get 5 deals and I need to do this. Like the last couple of years, I really put myself out there as I'll negotiate with the IRS, I'll negotiate with this, I'll take on these really hard deals. And guess what? The universe will give you everything that you want. Whether you're focusing on something you don't want, it still attracts it. But when you're clear on what you ask, you're manifesting every time, whether you want it or not. But be aware of what you're thinking of. So in that context, now I've declared that I'm going to take on easy deals, easy, profitable deals with ease and flow. Yeah, there'll be some challenges to solve, but now I'm declaring that, rather than being frustrated with, I did all of this work for a 50-50 split and not even putting my own value out there saying this is going to be a tough deal. I'm going to be 70-30 on this one.
Right.
Up front.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's an interesting point, because I know a while ago we were talking about something and you specifically mentioned to me, like you were working on a lot of tough deals, negotiating with banks, with the IRS, you were like, I'll make the calls. I'll make the tough calls.
Yeah.
So it's interesting just being aware of the fact that you said, I'll do it. And then those are the kind of deals that you had to deal with, because that's what you put into the universe.
Yeah.
And now taking that time to kind of reflect and say, what do you want? And you're like, I just want some easy flowing deals and not stress out about it. And that's what the universe is giving you with this new partnership.
And my partner Myra, she worked 15 years with Chase. She issued loans. She did loan modifications. She was in loss mitigation. She was a senior manager in their team for 15 years.
Wow.
What better person to come in that understands a lot of the stuff that I've done? She can probably cut a little bit more quickly through some of these things as well. Know what the banks want, and we work really well together. And in addition to that, the purpose really is that we can train somebody else to do these functions so that we're not doing all of those things. She's way smarter than I am, and so great with people that between us, we're going to divide and conquer so much.
Yeah.
She's already an investor. She's got some rental properties, renting by the room in some cases, not pad split, but different model. But we're not 100% aligned on what each of us want, of course, but there is alignment on what we choose to do together right now.
Nice.
That may be a very long-term thing. I hope it will be, or it'll be definitely a great conduit for our coming 1, 2, 3, 5 years at least. I would imagine, probably more, that we're doing something together. Kind of like Pace and Cody in that sense. Other people that work together, Carlos and Sal, they've got their own alignment, but they have their own projects at the same time. So probate's something I've specialized in, foreclosures, auctions, that type of stuff. I've done a number of flips the last 18 months, and there's many more things I've done as well, but I'm reeling that in. 6 doors in Ocala, we've got an opportunity coming up there. And I've got a couple of deals in the Caribbean that I'm working on as well. I translated Caribbean to Caribbean, so all of you.
Thank you.
But I've got a 120-acre project on Abaco in the Bahamas that I've got under contract right now, and there's another deal in Costa Rica, and there's about 40 behind that one in different places around the world. So again, ease and flow. Find people that you really align with, and don't force things. Don't try and just do a deal with somebody because, even I find myself now going in the Facebook group, I can help. No, that's not in Arizona. It's not in one of the markets I work. Happy to point people in the right direction. But again, oxygen mask first. Now I can help other people.
That's such an interesting point, because I think specifically in this industry, I've met and even myself try to be somebody that, because of the help that I received in the beginning, I want to pay it forward. I want to scratch somebody else's back, point them in the right direction, help out if I can. But it's interesting that you say, now, especially that one reference you made, oxygen mask, and then help somebody else. I think that's so important, because people just get bogged down. They get so bogged down in not only the shiny object syndrome, but in like the preserver, the life preserver role of helping other people to the point that they put themselves out for it. So that's a fantastic perspective.
You can think about that life raft, and you're the one in the ocean helping people get in, but then by the time you want to get in, it's full.
Right.
And it leaves without you. Because everyone's grateful for your help. And then, and you look at the go-giver. The first rule of the go-giver is you give more value than you receive in compensation. People forget the last bit of that sentence with which you receive in compensation. They're happy to take. And with so many people giving, they'll receive. But is it fair to not give some compensation, whether it's value in itself, financial compensation? You got their first deal. You've got a deal across the line that they couldn't have done otherwise. Because it's if you say let's work on that together. Oh, it's okay. I'll try and figure it out. Then they go to somebody else, and then they go to 12 people to get a deal done. Nobody gets paid except them, or they don't even finish the deal in a lot of cases because they weren't willing just to say. And all of the new students are coming. I said, look, not suggesting it's me, but find one person. Ask them if you can work with them for 6 months or a year or 3 months, whatever it is. Just get embedded with that person, the whole process, what they do, why they do it. And if they don't align, move on, find somebody else. But just find one person to work with so you understand how they work, what they do. Because I think a lot of people find that, say, I came to you, Jake, you said, oh, this isn't really a deal. Oh, hey, Maria, I've got this deal to look at. Oh, that's not a deal. Oh, Bob, I got this deal. Oh, great, let's work on that one. And suddenly they work with Bob on that one. Then the next one, Bob says, oh, it's not a deal. So they just bob between people instead of taking on. Bob's got a higher risk tolerance or doesn't really know as much and doesn't realize it's not a great deal until they can't sell it. Then they're disappointed and deflated because the deal wasn't a deal in the end. But if they had listened to somebody that was experienced and worked with, why isn't it a deal? Can we make it a deal? Can we negotiate down? Or is it just a walk away? And again, coming back to that time, which is the only finite resource that we have, sometimes that is the answer is just, hey, this won't be your first deal, but there's 12 others that you should be working on, just not focusing on this one particular deal.
Absolutely.
All right. So Trystan, what deal have you lost the most money on?
The one that I've lost most money on was one that wasn't actually my deal. In fact, I haven't technically lost the money yet because the auction hasn't happened, but I lent 20 grand to somebody last year, just over a year ago. My mistake in that one was not having a payback date on the promissory note. I just went through it and quickly signed it. So I couldn't foreclose on them when they didn't pay me back. And then really we not being familiar enough with the person that I lent the money to. Those are my two lessons. And I've gone through one of my good friends who's president of the bank that was the lender is foreclosed on my note. I had lunch with him the day I knew it was going to happen. And just laughed about it. It's one of those things. I mean, 20 grand isn't a small amount of money, but it's an easier lesson than losing $1 million down the road when you didn't find the same thing. So it's an investment in my future. And, we've got to take the silver line in the cloud, break through.
All right. So I think you just mentioned it, but just to reiterate, so what would you do differently moving forward, loaning somebody money?
The deal penciled very well.
Promissory note. Okay.
Sure. I mean, the deal penciled very well, but we didn't know interest rates were going to start going up in July. I didn't know the person well enough that with the exit strategy, was he just going to keep it at the very high price he anticipated and not take a cut just to get the thing off our hands and get the lenders paid back. But yeah, the two lessons were make sure there's a payback date on the promissory note so it's not at close. And then, before I even get to that stage is look at track record, maybe talk to the second position lender on the deal, who then became the fourth position lender behind me in third place. And, really just do more research on somebody and just lend only to people that I'm much more familiar with.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing about private money lending. I tell people all the time, that's the whole key is it's a private money lender who you privately know and build a relationship with, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's like, where can I find a private money lender? You build a private relationship with someone.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not the same as a hard money lender. That's different. That's, that's a bank. That's a commercial institution. Interesting. What else you got? You got any other last questions, Jake?
I know I say this all the time, but you covered just an amazing range and quality of items on the podcast. So I appreciate it. I think maybe if I could, and I say this all the time because this is usually how I end them, not that people are as, quality or experienced as you've been, but if you could say one thing, maybe one mistake that you made in a quick summary that you wish you heard when you were a beginner investor, something that might have the impact that you needed when you were a new investor, what would that be?
I think we go to the fourth law, the go-giver, receptivity. That's one of my I won't say flaws, but opportunities to receive more and be willing to receive. I had the good fortune of picking up these concepts very quickly on the conceptual side of things and understanding the theory and working through things, taking action, right in the beginning when I kind of started out with Elite Legacy wasn't inspiring, but really just looking at the receptivity thing and being willing to receive from others more willingly, more easily. And it's not that I haven't partnered and worked with other people. My first deal was a JV, and the majority of my deals have been joint ventures or collaborations with people. So it's not that I wasn't willing to collaborate with people. But really spend more time with productive people that were taking action and, you know, very experienced in the industry sooner at a deeper level in the business. I felt kind of restricted from having a day job and kids every other week, and it wasn't really every other week, you know, really around the time I started. So I didn't know the benefit of just spending some time maybe on a Saturday just down at somebody's office working, just watching, if not working.
Yeah.
And, you know, Blake Smith was one of the very first people that joined Sub 2 that was willing to have people over his office. And I didn't take the opportunity as much as I could have done, but just a huge heart, amazing human being. And it was that guy. It was one of the many, many guys that are out there. You just got to ask or just accept the invitation to do so. You know, I'm a super connector. I love relationships. I love talking to people. I love understanding people. You know, I think that the way that I boiled it down through learning from Matthew Ferry and his guys with, you know, Thatch and Wen, 4 things. It's called giving the gift, connect with somebody deeply, find out what they need in their life or their business now. Third is to provide a solution, a referral, maybe a suggestion, or, you know, sometimes that, you know, it's not always that you're going to have that $10 million somebody needs for a deal, but how just keep it in your mind. And the 4th thing is just allow the universal law of reciprocity to kick in. It's not going to be an instant thing. It's not going to be next day. It's not going to be, oh, I want a Ferrari and somebody turns up next day. But, you know, Matthew told a story about manifestation years ago. He was trying to manifest a free Ferrari. So he was, you know, keeping his mind on it, putting out there that he'd get a Ferrari, red, whatever color it was going to be. And his dad, Mike Ferry, called him and said, oh, my wife, she's got this Lexus thing that, you know, we got better cars than that. Do you want it? So he said, oh, yeah, I'll take it. That'd be great. So really nice, you know, luxury car. Drove it around for a few days, you know, realized when he turned up at the hotels, he'd used valet parking. It was one of those cars that you'd use the valet with, not the old piece of junk that he used to have. He realized, oh, wow, this is kind of nice, like a Ferrari. People turn their heads, you know, something I'm proud of walking up with. And then a week or 2 later, he was picking his son up in a, you know, one of the, you know, very young son in a car seat type thing. And he was driving home and suddenly realized, shit, this car, a Ferrari wouldn't have, I couldn't put a kid in a front seat of a Ferrari. And then, you know, realized, you know, it was pretty quick as well. And it was flashy and he had manifested the essence of a Ferrari, but not the Ferrari. And he realized that if he had the Ferrari, he wouldn't be able to pick his kid up from school in it. He, you know, talked to one of his friends that said an oil change was like $15,000 on one of these things, and realized he really had better than a Ferrari because he didn't stand in the way of it. A lot of us get very attached to specific outcomes and specific results instead of being committed to the journey and the essence of what we desire. And we don't realize we can have that today. We don't have to wait for that Ferrari or the Aston Martin, which I would be manifesting. I am. But it's really the essence of what it is that you're manifesting, that the world, the universe is putting even better things in your way. But because if you blink it on that one Ferrari and you don't get it, shit, I'm 70 years old and never got a Ferrari. But there were Porsches, there were other things that came along that were available to you. But because you're like this, you just didn't see them in your awareness, and coming back to awareness again. And it's a much more peaceful journey. You know, there's a lot of survivalists out there teaching to force things and push things. And, you know, you got to do all of these things, 100 deals a week. You got to push yourself. And, you know, there's a great book by Dr. David Hawkins called Power versus Force. And it outlines the levels of consciousness. But one of the other things that you know, the reason for the name of the book is, think of the British Empire. We did some pretty nasty things to countries around the world with force. We took over countries by force. Yet, look at India. Gandhi overcame the force of the British, you know, the empire, with no force whatsoever. It was just the power of mind, power of community and put that together and overcame, probably the biggest global force at the time with not meeting it with force. Whenever there's force, there's resistance. And if we resist what's coming along, we're not going to get what we want. Just have the essence of what you're looking for, be clear of what it is that you intend, and understand the universe will send you not probably what you desire, but something better if you're aware and open to receiving it. So be committed to the essence, the outcome, the feeling, and put aside what the exact thing is that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think it's like when people talk about, God doesn't always answer your prayers in the way that you expect him to, right? So same thing, like the universe might not give you that exact specific thing, but they're giving you something that's in essence exactly what you were asking for.
Or a stepping stone as a test to know that you're ready for the thing that you were looking for or better.
Yeah, it's so true. Okay, so before we conclude this podcast, and I appreciate so much listening to you, you've had so much wisdom that you've shared.
I'll listen to it later and maybe I'll take it in.
Yeah, right. Sometimes you got to take your own advice, right? You realize you're not even taking your own advice. Tell us a little bit about what's the next steps for you right now.
Next steps are close on 2 houses this week, a pad split and a property that I'm going to wrap. My partner just postponed an auction that was due Thursday so we can finish negotiating some IRS liens on a property that we're going to flip in Maricopa. I got a flip in Black Canyon City we just got the squatter out of, and another one in Sandtown that we got a court case next week. We're leveraging a divorce decree from 2012 in that one to force the sale of the property. Again, that was the last year when I was looking for hard deals, but we're just about the end of that one. And I've got 2 other flips that we're looking to buy right now. One I may be involved in, which may wholesale that. Another one I'm going to be doing, and there's another one that I'm wholesaling to somebody in Snowflake that we've been under assignment for 11 months. So stepping up the flip game a little bit, not too much. But really the aim is to buy as much cash flow as possible. Really get out to the Bahamas, see if we can get that project off the ground, then move on to Costa Rica and just travel later in the year.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. If people want to get in touch with you, Trystan, what's the easiest way to get in touch with you?
At Trystan Trenberth on Instagram is probably the easiest thing. That would be a great place to go.
Sweet. Jake, anything else?
No, just that. Trystan, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing everything. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I'm going to get you back on in like 6 months, and I want to see how everything's going with Myra.
McGinsey's boardroom. I hear it now.
Love it. All right. Thank you so much, Trystan. It was a pleasure.